Welcome to the Medical Podcast, where we discuss everything there's to know about Greece, our city Thessaloniki, our journey in medical school and life as a medical student. However, today our topic is a bit different, and the form of the podcast as well, as you can see. Today we're very happy to have Artemis Sadeghi, co-founder of Not Just Tourist Toronto chapter. Artemis, can you tell us about yourself and the organization?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Artemis. I'm co-founder of Not Just Tourists at University of Toronto, which is a nonprofit organization. I'm myself a University of Toronto undergrad student. I'm majoring in human biology, double minoring in immunology and physiology currently. Very interested in the whole health sector. That's why I decided to have my own chapter of Not Just Tourists at U of T, so that I can get other students also involved in our projects and Not Just Tourists.
Artemis, you explained it very well on your website already about your charity model and how that works. But from what we know, you guys do not accept any form of donations, at least money donations. How do you get around it?
It's a struggle. It's really hard because there have always been people, different companies, even different people who would wanna. It's easier to just donate money, and they say like throw money at the cause and hope for it to be solved. But at the same time, that is such a struggle for us to do all of this purely based on donations. It's also, I would say, a great value. It adds a great, unique, in fact, value to our organization, which makes people trust us more because they know we are not getting any money involved in any way, right? So you know that if you're helping out is purely based on volunteer work and people who really want something good to happen. So what really helps us is our connections. Our connections, spreading the word about our organization through like your podcast or other podcasts that we have been on, or through social media. Anything like that really helps us because as we get more and more people to know about us, when they come across situations where they have medical supply equipments and even disposing them in Canada is very hard. You can't just throw it in the trash, They should be handled in a different way. So it's very important for us to let them know that we are doing this. We are here. So let us help, right? And you get to help us and it will be very nice. So it all comes down to like humanity and helping one another at the simplest, in the simplest way, which is just contact the person who you know, right? Discuss this and then which is us, and we will be like, yeah, we will take the donation if it's suited, if we need it at that moment. And we take most donations. We just can't take like, there's certain things we can take, which is mainly like some liquids, some medications, because it's very hard for people to take them across borders without having issues with them. And we don't want to make our travelers go through any sort of like border issues. And every country's like rules are different when it comes to their border. So in that terms, other than that, we pack suitcases with like many bandages, syringes, different things. In hopes to help people, because when we see where these donations go, that's where it makes an impact, because they send a picture of us donating their suitcase to that clinic with the rest of the doctors or the personnel. And when you look at the environment that these suitcases are going to, you can really understand without any word being said that they really need it. you can put two and two together and like actually see it from the environment, from the lack of equipment, from just the building, how old it is, right? Compared to us in Canada, that we have like wonderful, like I would say, healthcare, and we're known for our healthcare system, even though it's not the most perfect. Compared to them, is pretty perfect, I would say.
You said about packing parties as well. We read about that. Could you explain a bit about it?
We have many different chapters of Not Just Tourists, and our organization is not only in Toronto and then U of D. We have a Toronto chapter. We have chapters around country, like in Canada. We have chapters in US, different states. And I'm not too sure, but when you go on the website, you can see all the different chapters in different countries. I believe there's some even in UK. So what happens during our packings is that every chapter's packing is different in terms of the day. But we do most of our packings either at University of Toronto, or we go to the Toronto chapter, which is our original chapter, and it's close to us. The medical supplies are already there in these big, usually bags of donations. And what we do is that we just bring a bunch of different medical supplies. Like sometimes we get like hundreds of masks, but obviously for one pack, we don't need 100 masks in one suitcase, right? So we just get different like supplies. Then we put them all on tables and we have our volunteers come. And then what we do is that we have different boxes that are labeled for different things. So we have categorized our supplies. Like we have syringes in one box, we have bandages in one box, we have like wet things in one box, we have glues in another. So it's very hard for us. So it's not very hard for our volunteers to know what to do and how to get around, because we don't only have volunteers who work in healthcare sector. A lot of us are students in like studying political science or other stuff, right? Not everybody knows even what they're looking at.
I read on your website that said that you do not need medical training to participate.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it, I would say.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But like, do you have to train your volunteer before,
So we have basic rules that we go through with each individual volunteer, that we do have volunteer coordinators in each chapter, that's basically their job. And we also have packing leaders, which they will be in during the packs there to basically make sure everything is going according to like, the plans.
Right.
What we do explain is that we explain like the exceptions rule, which is like certain things we cannot pack, like medication, for instance. Then we also have things that the packages are open. We cannot use those, so we have to throw those away.
Yeah.
Things that are expired, especially, and they can no longer be used. Those we have to also like, so that's why in the whole packing sessions, we just have a bunch of these equipment on like big tables, and we're just going through them, looking at individual dates on them.
That's actually pretty strict.
Okay.
Yes, because we can't like set, otherwise we're just filling up the suitcase with things that can't be used, and we don't want that.
I have a question. In the end, like, would there be someone to check, like the work, like the suitcases?
Yes. So when we're packing the suitcases, we have one person for that who will look over what's going in a suitcase. Which,
like the supervisor?
Yeah. So basically it goes through, we have a paper, which is like a checklist for each suitcase. It has like gloves, bandage, syringes, right? And you just check, it's like you check it. Because we want a little bit of everything in it, right?
Oh, so it's the amount is decided before, or is it always the same?
It's not always the same. We pack as much as we possibly can in one suitcase. Like we just like push everything, like I would say like I'm Middle Eastern myself, so we have this thing when we go on vacations, we just sit on our suitcases, try to close it.
Anyway, so you said in the Track from Abroad podcast before that, if the border police take the suitcase away, just give it to them. Don't fight back. How often does this happen?
From our chapter, most of the people who take a suitcase with them have to be referred to the main chapter because they have a travel coordinator and we're not allowed to have a travel coordinator. So the travel coordinator would know what's the process, legal, like they talk to them about the legal process of taking that suitcase as humanitarian help. Some airlines allow that suitcase to go as humanitarian help for free without any additional cost. Some don't. In case of like the police or the forces in the airport take the suitcase away, I wouldn't know. The travel coordinator would probably know, and it's the main chapter who gets to know.
Okay.
Yeah, because our chapter is it's the only student-led chapter, so we need to really have a travel coordinator because that's a little bit more into like the legal stuff.
The only student-led chapter.
Yes.
Okay, that's
So
cool.
the other chapters are not by universities. I'm the first who has the chapter like from as a student from a university. The rest of them are by grown-ups who actually work in this healthcare system or actually generally have an interest in making an impact.
How about the biggest delivery that you have ever done? You know, like the biggest ever suitcase.
Oh, well, we are very limited in the suitcase that we can give. Like all suitcases have a certain dimensions, and usually they're not like those huge suitcases that it's more like the what do they call it? The carry-on suitcases.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like backpacks or anything. It's suitcases, but it's like that. It's pretty big still, because we don't want our volunteers to pay additional costs.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Because then again, money gets involved.
Yeah, money.
So that's what all this comes around. So we have strict rules when we accept suitcase donations as well. Of like it has to have like the 4 wheels. It has to be big enough. It can't be too small. It has to be able to like close. We can't just get any like you abandon your broken suitcase to us and you're like I'm donating something. It's not gonna work.
Okay, so that's not a lot. That's like 7 kilos maximum, right? If you say it's just a carry-on.
Yeah, but the thing is that medical supply equipments are not that heavy.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you think about bandages and stuff, especially when we compress it, they're not that heavy.
Yeah.
It's mostly plastics and like wounds and things like that. They don't weigh a lot. And because we don't really carry liquids.
Yeah, if it's liquid, it's going to be much heavier. Yeah. You know, in Greece, there are a lot of unused medicine per year getting expired. And there's an organization called GiveMed that they try to find these medicine and to redistribute it.
Yeah.
I assume that because you don't want maybe the tourists to get into trouble with drugs, you know, carrying drugs outside the country. But I think some basic drugs, you know, just like paracetamol or some simple one wouldn't be a big deal. Have you guys ever thought about, you know, carrying medicine overseas?
Carrying medicine is very tricky because it's like individual pills. When we say medications, it's like individual pills, right? When there are like certain medications for certain disorders, diseases, or illnesses, the molecules in them and stuff, we don't know how they can be prescribed, whether they can be like lethal, you know, we don't know. And we also don't know whether that person needs to have a prescription to carry that medication.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
If they say, okay, you're having like a gallon of this medication, where's your
prescription? You're right. Yeah,
and
it reminds...
trouble for having that kind of...
Yeah, you're right. It reminds me of my grandma. She used to have to go to Singapore to pick up medicine. And every time she passed by the border, she has to show her prescription. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to get those drugs.
Yeah, the good thing is that the chapter basically gives a document with every suitcase to the traveler that mentions, and I love this about them. I've talked about this in every single podcast I go on. I talk about this. It does say that this is like a humanitarian gift from us to you.
Yes.
And like when the police, like whoever is at the border and asks like, what is this? Why is there so much medical supplies in one place? What are you doing? Are you trying to sell them? There's so many questions, right? And like travelers can just give the document that this is what this is. And usually with US, we have a lot of suitcases go to Cuba and those countries from Canada, which they kind of know. They after some time, I think they hear
stop
about,
asking, right?
Yeah, they know like this where it's coming from. They still look, I assume, because it's a very big deal to just carry like medical supplies with you from one border to another. But I think they understand it. But then for those who don't, we have that still
The
like
paper.
for them to look. And it's the country's rules. So like that's why I said like if you are like if the police says no, we cannot let this suitcase in, you kinda have to let it go because we cannot like force the law to change. Or like we don't want you to get into any kind of trouble.
Yeah, especially the tourists. You don't want them to get into trouble for doing something good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all for the good causes.
Based on your charity model, I'm guessing that you either have the problem with there's not enough stuff to give or there's not enough traveler to carry. Which one is more problematic?
I think travelers. Because one of the main reasons why I decided to have this chapter in University of Toronto is because University of Toronto has many international students. Like we are known for having the most amount of international students from all over the world. And we have people who have the luxury of traveling and visiting their parents every Christmas, holiday, every summer. At first, when I brought it up because let me take you back actually.
Yeah, sure.
Because in Canada, you have to volunteer in high school. You have to get a certain amount of hours, volunteer hours to graduate. And you can do this in any way you like, as long as it's volunteer work. So as I was like searching things to do, and I was very interested in the medical field, I came across Not Just Tourist. I decided to volunteer for them. I was volunteer at the main chapter, the Toronto chapter. I remember so they have weekly meetings, packing meetings, where you go, and it's in the basement of a church that the church basically gave them the space without any cost, which is also one of the struggles I had. I still kind of have at U of T, the space, because all of these medications have to be stored.
You have to store it,
Yes, and so we have to have a space where it has a locker, like a lock. It has to be like a proper room with a lock where I can leave the stuff and make sure it's safe.
How are you dealing with that problem?
It's very hard, especially when you don't have the finances to back you up. If we could get financial help, we could just rent out a place, but we can't do that. We have to wait. Every year, there is 4 clubs at U of T. They do offer lockers. However, they're not big enough for us.
Right.
So a lot of the supply gets to be in my parking garage. Or my basement, and then we just, for every pack, I just basically take it to U of T, which is very hard to handle. And then we store some of them in our lockers, but they're very limited in the amount of space they provide. And every single year, we have to just go through this whole application process of why we deserve the locker space, which basically says you might get it, you might not. because there's so many of the clubs that are applying every year.
Yeah, but you do charity. Shouldn't that be, like a priority or something?
I know,
Yes.
but I would say the hard part is that you have to be present.
Yeah.
And the committee, it's very hard to find them in one place and go sit with them and be like, this is why. Because all of this is being done online on a Google form. You're just
okay.
basically explaining your reason, and they have to make a decision based on that.
Okay.
Which I feel like if they had heard from me or any of the volunteers,
Yeah, then they would have given you already.
I think it will be more prioritized.
Yeah, for sure.
But then again, they don't have the space, or like we should every year apply to get the office space, which is hard. But the good thing about U of T is that when you're a club, you get to book different rooms as they're available. And we have big lecture halls, big rooms that we can book for our packing.
Yeah, for the packing parties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which makes it easier for us. There's no cost to them because we are U of T students.
Yeah.
So that's very nice. But it's very hard to handle all these like donations because I do a lot of the times get a lot of emails. Last year we got an email about this company that during COVID time was basically making hand sanitizers.
Okay.
And we're talking about like, I believe they said around $84,000 worth of hand sanitizer they wanted to donate.
Okay.
Yes.
But you don't have the space to start.
I do not have the space. And also the problem with that is that it's liquid.
Yeah, it's liquid. It's going to be heavy.
It's very heavy. How am I gonna,
Yeah, every time.
send it anywhere? It's very hard. And especially we try to like, I personally, even without not just tourists, like as an individual, I try to help them to get University of Toronto to accept the donations for their medical school, dental school, for their labs. We need hand sanitizers everywhere. But they weren't able to accept it because they already have a lot of it, right?
I don't think they would take donation.
University of Toronto does take donations,
For what?
but they have specifically a donation sector, like department, but it's mostly financial donations. There's heritage donations, like a valuable book or things like that.
Okay.
Very rare for me to see any sort of this
sanitizer
donation. Because they are usually on contracts.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for them to change their system, which is understandable, but at the same time sad.
No, I don't think they should take the donation anyway, because it sounds like that donation is supposed to be for the poor and the one who doesn't have it.
Exactly. That's another issue that comes into play. But the thing is that students, their health, it's important. Things like hygiene care, any kind of that, as a donation, I don't think it will be bad for students, especially because we have in U of T, not all students come from the same background. If you go to U of T, doesn't mean you're whether like richer than some other people or poor. We have a mix, right? Because here the government pays for your education if you're domestic, if you're a Canadian, right? Well, mostly, or in different forms, government tries to help you. So it's very important to also have those kind of hygiene equipments or different things available for those because you never know who is in need, really.
You were talking about COVID. I was looking at your website and I didn't see any reports for the last 3 years. I'm guessing it's because of the travel restriction during COVID, right? It must have been a tough time for you guys. How did you guys, work during COVID?
I didn't have the chapter during COVID times. I kind of lost touch with them. I didn't know much about them. I don't know what happened. I do think because I follow them on the Toronto chapter on Instagram, that they basically stopped packs. Because, if you can't together work and pack these suitcases, how are you going to do it?
Yeah, but they're coming back now, right? Now it's
They,
fine.
they are carrying, all chapters are carrying their packings again, which is very nice. Taking you back on how I got involved was that at U of T, as a first year student, as someone who knows that I want to go into this sector, I have to think about how I can get involved more and what's really meaningful to me. So I was looking at different ideas to start a club. And I was like, what better than something that already exists, and I just help it, flourish in a way, in my own way, in my own like area, which is like undergrad for university students. Because I know a lot of kids, undergrad students, a lot of people want to get involved. They like the hands-on experience of seeing this medical equipment, trying to do something about it, which I was like, I had a co-founder, one of my friends, and I was like, do you want to do this together? And then that's how it started. So we decided on it. We went back to, I basically contacted Not Just Tourists, and I was like, I would like to have a chapter, but they said no. They said the committee will not approve it because you are university students.
Yeah.
And you're going to graduate, and all this hard work of the chapter is just going to go to waste, right?
Yeah. How did you fight for it though?
Oh my God, it was really hard because I was like, listen, like I've been a volunteer. I love what you do. My two points to argue with them was that one is that I will make sure to hand the chapter to like
To somebody else.
To somebody else who is still an undergrad so they can carry it on. And also the fact that I will probably be studying still afterwards. So if I end up being at U of T, U of T's medical or dental school, I will carry it. If not here, anywhere else, I will just start another chapter there. But I will make sure this chapter goes to someone who cares as much. And my second point was that U of T has a lot of international students, and what's hard for you guys to find is travelers, people who are willing to take these suitcases and are already going to travel. And I can just, by getting the word out to more and more students, maybe they can get involved.
It's a bit weird because it's a charity. You're not supposed to fight to do it, but...
Well, they have to also make sure that they are giving the chapter to someone who cares, who's not gonna go over the rules. I went through training. It's not like you just go apply for a chapter and you get it. That's how you know they're serious about it.
Oh, you have to train.
Yeah, you have to sign a contract where you have to read all their values. That this is, there's no finances included. This is purely out of luck. This is all about like volunteering. You cannot like accept, we can't even accept money to go buy the donations.
So regarding the specific protocols for packaging and all that, let's say I'm traveling to Vietnam next week. I fill in the form. What do I do next?
So we put you in contact with a travel coordinator from Not Just Tourists. They look at your application. They ask you some questions like, where are you taking this? Which airline are you going with? I think those are really important. Whether it will be additional cost because they have to contact the airline to see if the airline would allow the suitcase for free or if they have to pay. They get to come. They get to see the suitcase. I believe we open it for them. They see what's in it because the traveler should know what they are carrying at all times.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
they don't want anyone to travel with anything that might affect the plane or go against regulations.
Exactly. We give them the checklist. They look at what's on the list because that represents what's in the suitcase. And they just basically agree with some of the terms and everything. They also have to tell us which clinic they're taking it to.
I thought that's decided before.
We don't decide that. Whoever is traveling decides that. Yeah.
Okay.
So what would happen if they didn't take it to a clinic or something? They just took it.
We always encourage everyone to take a picture with the suitcase open, the Not Just Tourist shirt, right? And the clinic, like sometimes the staff, sometimes one doctor, and we just show like how we're donating. Usually I would say people who are taking these suitcases, they have their heart in the right place. If you're willing to take an extra suitcase, if you like in families, usually everybody is nagging about that extra suitcase. So if you're willing to take that extra suitcase,
that sounds like a Vietnamese thing. Seriously.
Yeah, you shouldn't choose Wiz. They're gonna charge you through the roof for any extra.
Well, you never know, because especially before pandemic, from what I heard from talking to the other chapter coordinators, some airlines had humanitarian help placed on their website as
That's cool.
For free. But because of pandemic, a lot of things change. So I don't know if it's the same still for the same airlines, if everything has changed. That again, everything has to do with my travel coordinators, which is very hard to keep up with their work.